Jim Sanders says they have brought in consultants to work with teachers and administrators, but even for districts with lower suspension numbers, the disparity is clear.
I've never met a bad kid myself. And so I know that all kids can be worked with. We just, as a society, have to make a decision in terms of whether or not it's important enough.
Now, a bigger problem with these suspensions is that removing students from the classroom can lead to them falling behind in their schoolwork. This, in turn, makes them more likely to drop out of school. So what may seem like a suitable punishment for acting out in class, this can have even bigger consequences down the line. And that's something we'll get more into in tomorrow's story here on News 10.
Well, the disparity exists, and we pointed that out statistically. So is the state or school districts doing anything to address the issue?
Yes, the state, actually, Governor Jerry Brown signed a bill back in September. This bill eliminates willful defiant suspensions from grades K through 3, but upper grades, they will still face the same punishment. So that is still an issue. And some districts, even with lower numbers, like Sacramento City Unified, for example, 8 out of every 10 students that are suspended there are students of color, Black or Latino.
Well, you pointed out the problem, and we want to believe that school districts will do the right thing and recognize that, okay, this disparity is real. Let's take a look at it and see what the reason is and if something can be done about it.
Yes, and we'll have all those numbers on news10.net, so you can check out, your school district. So, I mean, the numbers are very, very troubling for a lot of districts in our area.
Right. Thank you.
I've been running these meetings for quite a while, and you're just sort of in the background. I think you know what I'm talking about here. Huh? Jim, listen, I gotta call you back. These kids. All right. What the heck is going on here?
Yeah. Oh yeah, I got hops.
But John Hunter says his dunking skills didn't win him any points with his physical education teacher.
I went up to go dunk the ball, and she didn't say anything like, "Oh, you can't dunk the ball." I mean, it's basketball. Why wouldn't you not dunk the ball? So I dunked the ball, and then she just wrote me up.
Let me remind you what the task is.
Hunter says he wasn't allowed to return to class. Instead, was sent to a room to serve out his in-house suspension.
Just sitting there. We're just sitting there staring at a wall. I mean, at least sit me at a desk with some homework to do, but it doesn't go like that.
We know that the surest way to ensure a kid doesn't get a good education is if they're not in class.
But African American and Latino students find themselves outside of the classroom more often than white students. They're called willful defiant suspensions, and this overwhelmingly impacts students of color.
Who's group 1?
These suspensions give teachers the power to remove a student from class if that student is disruptive or defiant. But here's the real problem.
The title of the article is
What behavior qualifies is really up to the teacher's discretion.
The research speaks very, very clearly that students of color don't engage in more egregious violations than any other student. So there's something else at play, and it could very well be those differences, that I think is often represented in the fact that many of our teachers don't look like a lot of our students.
So, who thinks your suspension was justified? These 3 Kennedy High students didn't get into trouble for fighting weapons or breaking any laws, but all 3 have been suspended from school.
She told me to go get out, and then I was like, all I was doing was asking for a pencil so that I can start the warm up, and then that escalated to turn into an argument, and then she called the security, and then I got suspended.
As we make the mistakes, yes, give us a punishment, but not the punishment to where we can't get our education.
You're going to come back and present this information to the group.
Daryl White runs the Black Parallel School Board. They work to provide support where they believe the school districts are lacking. But he was once a principal at Grant and Luther Burbank High Schools, and he says he used to get stacks of referrals.
And I discovered that just over 20% of my teachers were responsible for over 80% of my referrals. I think they sometimes see behaviors in some kids and say, oh, That's one of those kids. I'm going to have to be really, really hard on that kid, because being hard on that kid is going to make that kid straighten up.
The official Sacramento City Unified School District also sees flaws in the system.
I think sometimes, suspension becomes a catch-all because, a teacher or a site administrator just doesn't know what else to do.
Many educators recognize that suspension should be a last resort. Still, suspensions are handed out on a consistent basis in district after district. African Americans make up just 6% of the student population across the state, but in 2014, account for 20% of willful defiance suspensions. That's up 1% from the previous year. Now compare that to white students. They also face these suspensions 20% of the time. The thing is, there are nearly 5 times as many white students as black students in California schools.
So looking at the number was staggering, but knowing that to change that number is to get at the academics and the academic achievement of our students, but also supporting them through other means so that they can engage.
The disparity is even more pronounced at some districts in our area. Lodi has 3 times as many white students as African Americans, but African American students are suspended 25% of the time, white students 6% of the time. Natomas has slightly more white students than black.
Let me hear you say, hey, Miss Carter. Say, hey, Miss Carter.